Hi, my name is Erin Pellegrino. I am the co-founder of Outofarchitecture and the founder and principal of Matter, and you're watching A Student's Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact universityhallofinnovation@gmail.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Bianca and Vanessa. Today we're here with Erin Pellegrino. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So to start, do you want to just give us a little bit of maybe a background about your education? We can start there.
Sure. So I'm an architect, went to architecture school, did my BArch at Cornell, which was a function of really liking design and physics in high school, and one day Googling design and physics and landing on architecture. The college admissions process was strange to me. I was the first person in my family to go to college, so didn't really know what I was doing, but stumbled into the wonderful world of architecture. Did my undergrad there, completely fell in love with designing and building things. I worked in the shop while I was there and took a lot of furniture design classes, participated in a series of design builds, and just really fell in love with making something out of nothing. After undergrad, I knew at some point in my life I wanted to teach, and probably out of a little bit of insecurity, I decided I needed more education and I needed another degree, so I went to straight from undergrad to grad to the Harvard Grad School of Design, where I got to participate in a lot of other, again, design build or other types of studios that were more focused into what I was interested in. But I also got to take a lot of classes outside of the design school, which was really helpful. So I took classes at the business school and the Kennedy School and really started to realize all of the other things in the world that influence architecture and got really interested in the business side and the structural side of how we relate to the society that we serve, and got really frustrated with the education that I was getting that was missing that on the architecture side. So started to expand as much as I could into that, and was invited to do a pilot, actually MBA program for free. So while I was finishing up my master's at Harvard in design, I started actually a master's in business as well, which was really sort of scratching this itch of how do we actually operate in society, not just design, but operate as a business. So did that, and from then on, it's been a mix of trying to balance all these things that I'm interested in and make that part of my career trajectory.
Wow.
Yeah, that's more than
I was ready for. So you do a great job with, I feel like, finding so many different aspects of not just the design world, but how the entire thing functions and how to like bring it all together. Like you were like, I have an interest in physics and design, and how do you put that together? So now I feel like a lot of designers and architects will do the architectural and the design aspect, and then they don't always have all of the knowledge we don't all have all of the knowledge ever, but to have so much of it in one human being. Very impressive.
Well, it's kind of like, so there's that saying, like, jack of all trades, master of none. But the full sentence there is, like, jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of none, right? So I think I'm the type of person that just really always likes to learn, and if I don't know something, I kind of fixate or obsess on it. I can't say I do any of those things the way that an expert would, or the way that someone who's really made that their focus as well as them. But what I will say is that I always knew that I wanted to start my own thing, and I felt coming out of design school I wasn't prepared to do that, and I needed to get some sort of training in that, and I do think the profession doesn't always do a great job of that as well. So I said earlier I was frustrated with my education, but I think also there are great offices out there that run their businesses from a design perspective very well as a business perspective. But you can't always just kind of walk in the door and say, I want a job, teach me. So I felt like I needed to learn a little bit more and get better at it. And I think, we're all kind of growing up now in this kind of startup world where there's disruption. And I guess I was thinking, what is the way that we can disrupt the design profession in a way that makes it more sustainable, more equitable, and just better, and modernize it from what it's been, which is, historically a gentleman's profession.
Yeah. I resonate with you very heavily. I was actually just telling Stephen this yesterday, that I felt like I literally said word for word, I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And that's why when you said that, I like whipped my head and stared at him, because I said that verbatim yesterday. And I was like, I have all of these interests and I don't know where to go with it. So I am minoring in business because I'm literally like copying you. I'm like, I have these interests and I want these this sense of knowledge that I don't have. So hearing you say that is like, okay, maybe I am I'm on the right track of wanting that knowledge. And I'm on the fence about pursuing my master's because I want that extra push of knowledge that I don't know how I'll get, because I do love learning, but I don't know if that's something that comes from practice or comes from my will to learn at school. Does that make sense?
I think all architects are avid learners. I think we're always curious.
Yeah.
I think it's a nature of all designers, I think, not just architects, right? Because you want to tinker and be curious about things, and you want to not just be curious and learn, but actually, probe. So no, I think in school it allows you to be hyper focused on that, and that's one of the things I appreciated about. I went to school in Ithaca, New York, and it's in the middle of nowhere, which is actually very helpful. You could really hone in and focus, and college is a really special time to do that. But I think all architects so the jack of all trades, master of none. The more professional way Jake and I have found to coin it is expert generalist.
Okay.
Right, and you have this wonderful ability to learn enough about a subject where you're not going to be a master in it, but you can speak intelligently about it.
Right.
You can work with consultants or experts who are,
Right.
and learn how to best use their skills and their abilities to further the common goal, which is typically, a design or some sort of endeavor to make something. And I think, a lot of architects do tend to specialize, but at its core, at our core, expert generalist is what we're trained to do really well. I think getting a minor in business is brilliant. I wish I had done that. To get started early and just be thinking about it kind of from that perspective as well. And I honestly, I wish everyone could have some sort of business education or just even personal finance. It would just be incredible. Personal finance and nutrition.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
Fundamentals of life.
Vastly overeducated, and I'm now looking for ways to take a class in nutrition because I don't know what I should really be eating. So it's
What's that?
Right. It's what's actually good for me, and what's this, what's sort of
absolutely.
a fad, exactly. So no, I think it's a vocabulary that's important for humans to know, but I think architects in particular.
Yeah, we're a special breed. Always curious.
Yeah,
I like that. Always curious, because I for maybe 2 weeks ago, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, because I was having a mid-college crisis of, do I want to completely change my career and design cars, or do I want to stay in building houses or commercial residence or whatever. I'm back and forth 100 times, but I like that sense of I could still be curious and pick things up and put them into other things. So I guess I have to figure something out where I could do both, where I could just keep learning and adding into my processes.
If you're interested in the car thing, they're just moving buildings. Right?
See, that's what I think I'm passionate about.
Yeah, so my co-founder out of architecture works at Adidas, and when he went back to our alma mater to see professors and whatnot, I remember him talking to one of our former professors, Alex, and being like, oh, I work at Adidas now. And he's like, oh, you're designing shoes. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, those are just houses for feet. Right? So like this idea of the design process, it carries through. If you're interested in cars, I would look at that. I had actually a colleague who I went to grad school with who went to the GSD because he wanted to get into automotive design, and did like a slightly different design degree to do that. And, to me, it's not as much of a crazy deviation. And even so, you're comfortable as a designer in the uncomfortable. Like design is always like uncertain, right? So your career is also a design problem. It's okay to like explore and iterate and be like, I kind of like this, or oh, I didn't actually like that. Like I know there's things I don't like designing. Yeah. Large buildings, I don't like designing them. Glassy towers, not my thing. And that's okay too. Finding out what you don't like is just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You did mention your firm as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Matter, yeah. So yeah, I simultaneously run 2 businesses, both with incredibly supportive partners, which, I guess business school helps you learn that you can't do everything all by yourself, which I do think architects, like, I can figure this out, I can do it. And that's a great attitude, but no. That means you don't sleep and you probably don't do it very well. So yeah, Matter is myself. I started actually when I was still in grad school, but in the way that I've worked with Out of Architecture and Jake, who I also met in undergrad, Charlie is my partner at Matter, and we do small scale experimental design build, which dovetails in what we teach. So we try to teach through the lens of community engaged design. So Charlie has a background at Cornell with Jake and I, but then also at Rural Studio. That's where he did his master's, which again was in looking at housing in the rural South, and looking at engaging communities in a literal physical way to build things that they need. So what we do at Matter is a sort of a high-low situation. So we do a lot of work for high-end clients that are very experimental, and that spans kind of furniture to small-scale building. Wow. And then we try to take those lessons that we learn in building these non-traditional or non-standard structures. We try to take that and parse it down to understand how do we then build cheaply but also well. Mm-hmm. So we have the benefit of being able to kind of operate on both sides of that, and in the ways that we teach, that's usually what we teach. So design, build, community engaged design, things like that. So we've just finished 2 projects on Martha's Vineyard. It's the high side. We've got a renovation or 2 renovations going on in the city. Of these things, we're doing the custom millwork, or we're heavily involved with the contractors and what they're doing. And then at the same time teaching out in Newark at New Jersey Institute of Technology, currently focusing on a studio to design and build supportive housing communities in Newark for people without addresses.
Okay. I want to jump back to that for a second. I do want to ask about, it seems like you're very hands-on with the process, as well as the design part of it. What does that interaction look like? Even like you said, even the communication with the contractors.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always making and thinking to me are inextricably linked. Charlie's incredibly great at drawing through ideas. Very good at sketching. Loves to work out details that way. I like to put things together. Yeah. So I was always the model maker. Not that he doesn't make models, but I would always need to think things through in that way.
Right.
And it's also what I love to do. I think one of the reasons I started my own thing was because I missed being in a wood shop. Yeah. So we have a shop out in New Jersey that's really more of like a mobile shop. It pretty much can pack up in the back of a truck for the most part and go anywhere. We've got like a handheld CNC. We've got tools that we can take, and we've lived on site building the things that we're building. And it depends on the scale of the project. What expertise we have and what we're missing. And I think one of the ways we choose projects is this something we're going to learn something new by doing? The other side of that, though, is partnering with incredibly skilled contractors who have, the patience and the excitement to work with an architect who wants to be hands-on. So our contractor selection process is probably just as important to us as our client selection process. So that's always usually like a conversation. But we have, on the vineyard at least, we have a contractor that we've worked with that is just, he's become like our dad. And, comes to site and like, here, you want to see how we're doing this foundation? So, I think a lot of contractors respect when an architect wants to get on a ladder.
No, it's so true, though, because it's like, I'm trying to make my design actually happen. I'm not just designing it for the credit of having a design.
Right. Yeah. And pushback. Like, we'll say, hey, we want to do it this way. And, contractors make their money and have to warranty projects so they know the way they can do something so it will last.
Right.
And oftentimes they don't want to deviate. And I can completely respect that. But also, when you show that you're willing to work with them. So I remember, we're sending sketches back and forth, or he's sending me a photo and I'm sketching on top of it, or even just on site, then it's me and Charlie and the contractor being like, all right, what if we did it this way? And what if we installed it this way? And, so finding people who are willing to work with you in that way, is awesome, because I'm learning all the time. I never want to stop learning either. I never wanted to be, I can't be bored.
I know, sitting still is not our forte.
No, same.
That's awesome that you get to see, like, go on the ladder and, like, see what's happening and things like that, because like we're doing in school, we're kind of just like, well, hypothetically, this could work. But it's always, like, that, like, fixation of wanting to see how it actually does work and, like, putting these pieces together. And I'm constantly thinking in the back of my brain, like, when I'm, like, laying down to go to sleep, I'm, like, still thinking about my project. I'm thinking about my project. I was like, oh my god, like, if I had this piece there, this could be so much better. And it's just, like, my brain never shuts off. And it's just cool to see, it's cool to hear that you get to see piece by piece how things get put together and work with those people to make it happen. I like that.
Yeah, those are the problems I like to solve.
I think I feel very similar.
And you mentioned, the model making process, that, like, that part of our education never dies. Like, it's always, you're going to have to pick up, even if it's a piece of paper and we chop it up into a couple pieces and put it together to see. And I feel like that kind of put it back in perspective of, if you want to see this being built, I feel like I have to just do it. Like, if it's small scale, large scale, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I mean, the tool, it's not that we're only making physical models either, right? Like, there are times where I'll use Rhino to understand the sort of 3D connection, and obviously CAD. So, I mean, we learn a lot of ways to iterate and ideate, and I think getting really fluid between those mediums is helpful and important. I'm not getting stuck in one. I just happen to really like putting things together. So if I'm covered in sawdust, it's a good day.
Exactly. So now I do want to ask a little bit about the project that you are working on, that we mentioned a little bit.
Sure.
So what does that look like for the students and for you, and then what does that actually look like for the community as well?
Yeah, so we call it POD, which stands for Place of Dwelling. The students have actually put together a really excellent website. It's placeofdwelling.com, but it's essentially last year, so fall of 2021. Yes. We were asked to put together a studio about sustainability during the sort of COVID pandemic, and walking around Newark, we had just realized that, like, there was nothing more sustainable about, or less sustainable about having everyone be sheltered in place, and then for people who don't have homes or places to go, what do they do, right? So we proposed to the school to do a studio that was going to be design build, to see what we could build for $10,000. So we raised $10,000 outside of the school to see if we could prototype a tiny home. Granted, labor is free because the students built it, so I don't want to mislead anyone, but we did build for $10,522, a small scale prototypical deployable house, single, actually really just a detached bedroom. So it was a bedroom without any sort of bathroom facilities. The way the communities in Newark work is that they're supportive housing, and then there's a place on site for bathing and kitchen and all that sort of stuff. So we did this studio kind of without the city input. It was just something we wanted to see if we could do. The students built the thing, and that started to get a lot of attention, and we wanted it to go to use. I thought it would be a complete failure if it stayed on NJIT's campus. actually the night we were finishing it, we're there at like Sunday evening at like 8 o'clock at night, where my students are kind of drilling in the handrail, and one of them's putting up lights, and actually a homeless gentleman walked up to us and asked us if we had any food, and we did. We gave him something to eat, but also I'm putting the handle on the door where, in an ideal world, we could just say, hey, do you need a place to sleep? Here you go.
Yeah.
So that got some attention. Yeah. So it meant a lot. I've had students at NJIT that were housing insecure, sleeping in studio because they had nowhere else to go. And it's just a problem within the community. And we're architects, right? It's like we build things. So the city got excited about it. We had the head of urban planning come to the school, and he really pushed trying to get this to be a more collaborative relationship with the city. So now this semester, the students are working directly with the Office of Homelessness Services and the homelessness czar. His name is Lewis. We've had them come in the last 3 weeks a bunch to look at the designs, talk about things. Today we'll be hosting a workshop with residents of another supportive housing community in Newark to understand, where the design is going, what needs to improve. And the hope, after they present to the mayor, is that in the summer, or late spring, early summer, they'll break ground on, our students' version of Hope Village, which will be Hope Village 3. We have to go through a whole community process with that as well, so the students will have to do that, and that will bleed into the spring, where we'll bring it to community meetings, understand what their concerns are, how to make things better. So designing the houses, the village itself, and then also understanding how that weaves into the community is a big part of that project.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm a little bit moved by that project
No,
as a whole.
Absolutely.
It's such an intense process, and it's a lot that they're putting into it, but it's also a lot that they're getting out of it. I feel like in return, not just, educationally, but emotionally and like impactfully as well. I think that that's a huge driver for us as problem solvers, realistically, because that's, I think, as a whole, like what our career is like seeing a problem and creating and building a solution for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said that some students were like housing insecure and they were sleeping in studio, that just like made my heart like so heavy. But it's also like very inspiring that you guys are putting these puzzle pieces together to create these solutions, and it's very nice to hear that us as designers, we could do something to solve these problems.
Right, on an individual level.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that, going back to our conversation about business, right, like, in a service-based industry, which is what we are, typically clients come to you, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that model. But I think as architects, you're trained to look for problems. You're problem seeking as well as problem solving. And not everyone is going to say, here's the problem I have, and I need an architect to help solve it. So I think we were just in a unique opportunity, obviously given the position at the school, also given mine and Charlie's practice, that we could help facilitate that, and just wanted to do something. And we're, granted the opportunity by the school, because they were definitely, having 10 or 15 students who have never built or never been on a construction site or never built anything before. I think that the school put a lot of faith in us, and, our students are also, they were so dedicated. I mean, yes, it was exciting. They got to build a building. They worked probably 3 times harder than anyone does in a regular studio, because not only did they design it, not only did they produce a construction document set for it, but then they built it, and at the same time they're editing the construction document set, because nothing ever goes the way you think it's going to go when you draw it, which is a useful exercise.
But that's, I was going to say, like, they're probably getting so much from that, because now they're not just sympathizing, with the designer's aspect, but they're also sympathizing with the builder's aspect.
Right.
And understanding that your design isn't always going to be exactly how you designed it to be. Yeah. But then it's just another piece of the puzzle of like, okay, well, how do we problem solve that to make it actually happen?
Right, and how do you get your hand, so if you're going to design this and you need to put a bolt through something and also, a nut on it, did you leave enough space for someone to actually put their hand there and twist? So they've learned that. They were also, basically 8 to 8 on the construction site, and then 8 to who knows, back up at their desks. Right. So that was intense, and I think we're working on ways to try to make it a little bit more manageable.
I know that I would definitely freak out at that project with like the stress levels, but I'm almost 100% envious that they get to see every aspect of design. Like, okay, the idea, now the construction document, because we're making construction documents, but ours, we don't know how far they're gonna get to the point where they might never be built. So I don't understand the concept of, in my project personally, I don't understand, am I leaving enough room for this to happen? Or how does this actually translate in real life? So I'm envious of that sense of they get to build it, mess up, which is like the best part, because then they get to go back and reevaluate the whole situation. So it's awesome that they're getting that learning experience. I mean, I could just do this like on my own kind of thing and fulfill that like itch that I'm like, how is this really gonna work? But it's awesome that it's pushed and being fulfilled 100%.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, I had the good fortune to start working in a wood shop at the same time I started my architecture degree, which, and I kind of knew what I was doing because I had taken, wood shop in middle school and stuff, and I love tools, and I grew up around contractors. But I do think, like, every architect should have to build a stud wall and tilt it up and just understand that process and see how it stands up, how it doesn't, how it gets supported, how you attach sheathing, how you attach that. I'm speaking out of order, but how you attach it to whatever sort of foundation it's laying on. I mean, it's also incredibly satisfying. So the design itself had a superstructure, these wooden trusses with bypass beams, and then they were able to build the little dwelling unit underneath that. When those trusses went up, it was like, it was like Christmas morning for them to finally see, like, okay, here's two walls, and then we clad that with corrugated metal on top, and then they could build the little pod, construct these walls, tilt them up all together, put it together, and then zip it together, and then, in a day you have a box. It's the coolest thing ever. Like, it's just, seeing that stuff manifest is definitely a high if you really like building things, which I learned I do. Definitely.
So previously on the Student's Perspective, we had interviewed Jake Rudin, and we know that you're part of Out of Architecture. So do you want to explain what that is a little bit?
Sure.
And get into detail about that.
Yeah, Jake's my other partner in crime. The ironic thing here is that I ended up making a lot of trouble in undergrad with two other people, one of whom being Charlie and the other being Jake, and I now turned that into a career. So Out of Architecture, Jake and I started in 2018 officially, but it was something that we had been doing. We joke that we were our own first clients before Out of Architecture became a thing. But it's a career consultancy, and now really proud to say a community that looks at all of the things you can do with an architectural background. We've talked about the pitfalls or the downsides of some of the things we learned, but it's an incredible education. Again, you learn to make something out of nothing. You learn to get uncomfortable or comfortable in the uncomfortable. You learn to iterate and fail quickly and pick yourself up from that. You also learn things like public speaking, because you're forced to. You're forced to publicly take criticism. You're forced to also really actually synthesize that criticism, because not all criticism is good, right? So all of these, both hard skills, the technical skills that you learn, and the soft skills, the presenting, the stakeholder management, the time management, are all just incredibly useful, both in, out, and adjacent to the practice of architecture. I also think, for me personally, and Jake feels this way as well, the profession is changing. The way one started a firm, or the way one became an architect 30, 40, 50 years ago it's just obsolete at this point. And that's a good thing. So Out of Architecture looks at all the ways we can redefine that term, and also expand it. You are not just an architect just because you went to architecture school and got a license. I say I'm a builder, I'm a thinker, I'm a maker, I'm all these things. I'm now an educator. We wrote a book. I'm technically an author. And I like the idea of expanding this title. We work one-on-one with clients. We have a Slack community. And we interact a lot on social that just try to put all of these opportunities out there for people to see, and also work to try to change some of the things in the profession that we just personally don't agree with. The profession is undervalued. That has both reasons from a top-down perspective as well as a bottom-up. There's also historical reasoning for that. A lot of architects are very bad business people, so that feeds into that and our previous conversation. But we're also losing agency through the way that contracts have been sort of changed over the last 15, 20, 25 years, really actually since the 70s. We're losing agency in the built environment, which is, I think, a bad thing. So we try to bring these things to the fore, talk about things, talk about them, talk about things like burnout, talk about why the profession is not, from an economic, social, class, or gender perspective, really all that diverse. And try to look at ways we could make that better. Now, that said, that doesn't always mean that you end up staying in the architectural profession. My partner at Out of Architecture is Jake. He works at Adidas. We've had people go into yacht design. They've gone off to work in service design for McKinsey or as consultants. They go on the client side, do amazing things with all of these skills that you get as an architect, but also with what your passions end up being. We have people who go into UX because they really like the user research side of things. The pre-design and the schematic design phase of architecture aligns very well with that sort of endeavor. So we essentially get to work with and talk to and build this community around all of the wonderful things that it means to be an architect and how you can, either change that title, expand that title, or maybe abandon that title.
Yeah, that's amazing. I definitely want to look into that deeper because I'm always like, well, I want to fulfill this, or I want to fulfill this, but I don't know how I can. So I love doing what I'm doing and speaking to all these different types of designers who are like, it doesn't matter. You're just going to keep learning and doing all these different things. So it's nice to know, I always say this, it's nice to know that there's so much growth in this field and I can really have all of these different outlets. So
there's no one way to be an architect, and you can take advantage of the fact that most people that are not architects don't know what we do.
Right.
They don't have an understanding of what we do. They say blueprints. I have never seen one. Except maybe in a museum, right? So, and I don't think they necessarily know what that means, and I don't mean that in like a sort of pretentious way, but that's an opportunity to be like, no, this is, as an architect, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's actual protections around the title, and you shouldn't use it unless you can. Right. But you have the agency and the authority to design your career and your title, and I fully recommend you capture that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for your book, when will we see that on the shelves?
So it releases today, November 10th. If people ordered it, we got some notifications that people had gotten them today. So that's exciting. It's also on Audible. Jake, as well as being an ex-architect and a designer at Adidas, also did the audiobook recording because he used to be a voice actor. So that's available on Audible. You can get all of this also through our website, outofarchitecture.com. And I think there's a Kindle version as well. So it's fully out there, accessible to read. We're throwing a big party in New York next Thursday, the 17th. So if you're all welcome to come to that if you like. It'll be a chance to drink wine and talk about the experience.
Awesome.
But so it's out now officially as of this morning.
That's amazing.
That's
Congratulations.
Awesome. Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy it's done.
Yeah.
A beautiful and challenging process. As always.
Yes.
Absolutely.
New things I learned.
Yeah.
And now you have a new title.
Author. Yeah. I'll add that to my list.
It's ongoing.
That's amazing. So, twins. So, you have given us a big rundown of everything that you have accomplished in your career so far. Looking back to your student self, is there a particular piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Just do it. I think the biggest thing I struggled with, and there's a chapter in the book on this, it's called the insecure overachiever. The biggest thing I struggled with was confidence. It's one of the things I give Jake a lot of credit for, kind of an unabashed extrovert, and he would just ask for the things that he wanted. I didn't know how to do that, as simple as that sounds. I was good at design. My professors liked me. I got praise. That's great. But I always felt like it wasn't good enough. And that cultivates, I think, bad habits in the sense that you stay up too late because you feel like I'm not there yet. But also, you miss out on opportunities because you're worried about your own confidence. The older I've gotten, the more I've realized how little other people think of you, or how little they really think about the perspective that you're coming from. most of the time, once I've realized to just ask the question or ask for the thing you want, or just force yourself to do it, to figure out a way to make it happen, the more I've realized that, the harder you work, the more opportunities come to you. And if confidence gets in the way, the fake it till you make it thing is real.
Yeah.
Finding a way to kind of put that off to the side or say, I'm going to do it anyway, even though this is happening, has been the most transformative, I think, piece. And if I could have learned that earlier or believed it earlier, I think people say this all the time, but something clicks at some point where you just take that advice. And I have friends who struggle with it. I have friends who are older than me that struggle with it. So the confidence thing is the biggest issue. And I think particularly as women in architecture, speak up more. That's really what I learned. I learned to talk more. I was very shy.
Speak your mind. Yeah, that's a really good piece, because I think that there's, like, even when we were referencing back to just make a model, whether it's in Rhino or hands-on, just try it. Just see how it is. If you don't like it, you can always change it, but do it.
Yeah. The inner voice is lying to you.
Yeah, it is. It's chirping away.
It's what's going to hold you back, I think.
We had an interview with Jane Dagny, and she said that her friend called that voice the what was it? It was like the shitty itty.
The itty shitty.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Or something. Yeah.
It was great. That's awesome.
Something
And
of
she was
that
like,
nature.
just tell something to shut up.
It was so funny.
No, it's true.
It's very. It's
that
the
thing
honest truth.
definitely holds me back sometimes, and I feel like I try so hard to like push through it, but it always stops me. So hearing designers like you who have done X amount of things, and you say, well, this held me back, it kind of like gives me the confidence to say, okay, I'm not at a bad point in my life. Like I'm this is just my phase right now.
Right.
So it's like, it's always refreshing to hear that you have felt the same way that I do as a student.
Yeah, I feel like if people say they haven't, they're either psychopaths or they're lying. I mean, we're humans, right? So, and I would probably stay away from them anyway, because either of those two things are bad. But just do it would be what I would say.
Yeah.
I think I've toiled over decisions or asking for things for so long that it got in the way. And I think someone said to me the other day, like, and you've got a book, like, oh, I was like, I just decided to stop taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
And most of the time I was telling myself no.
Yeah. That's true too. Like we're like, oh, I'm not taking no for an answer, but it's like also to yourself too. Like don't take no for an answer from yourself.
Yeah.
Great point on that one. Because I didn't think of it that way until just now.
Saying no is important. I will say that, but
like,
not taking projects is also important. But I think especially in my earlier years in college, like seizing every opportunity regardless of like, oh, can I really do this? And sometimes you bite off a little more than you can chew, but Charlie says my catchphrase now is like, he's taken it from me, and his mom said the other day, like, your catchphrase is, we'll figure it out.
Right.
Because it's like, you get to a point where you trust yourself enough, like, I can figure this out, or if I don't, I know I can go to people for help.
Right.
Which is a learning experience in and of itself.
Yeah, and accepting, you don't have to do it all by yourself. There's so many people that are
partners are great.
Right.
Teammates are great. Collaborating is great.
Yeah. It makes it the ability to have all of these checkpoints.
Right.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Erin, really appreciate everything that you've said to us and all the advice and those inspirational words. We really appreciate that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and share.
And join us next week as the conversation continues from a student's perspective.
We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.